Hello dear World of Tanks players, my name is Charcharo and this is my review slash guide of the IS-7 Tier 10 Soviet heavy tank. The IS-7 is part of the Soviet, the Soviet heavy assault tank branch, which starts off at the KV-1S, IS, IS-3, goes on through the IS-8, and all of this culminates into the very IS-7. Now the IS-7 is one of those tier 10 vehicles which comes fully elite. You don't really need to research anything, quite unlike the M48 Patton or the Bad Chat, which is always a plus in my book. When it comes down to the three most important things in a tank, mobility, firepower and armor, the IS-7 is a balanced vehicle. When it comes down to its armor, its frontal armor uses a piked nose shape, just like the IS-3 and the IS-8. These 150mm plates here are at their best when they're facing the enemy head-on, like this. And they pretty much offer around 270mm of protection. Its lower plate is a weak spot, but it offers around 210mm of protection, which is not that bad, but it's still a weak spot, which most tier 8, 9 and 10 vehicles may be able to penetrate. This part here is actually a strong point. This is where the beak meets the two plates and is around 240mm thick. However, it's also sloped, which means it's probably 300mm overall. It's very thick. So its frontal armor is very good, but there is a catch. It works at its best when the enemy is again looking at the IS-7 directly. If the enemy were to do like this and look at the IS-7 from here, or the IS-7 just doesn't pay attention, the enemy can get a shot like this one, they will probably penetrate. Why so? Because the plate loses a very large part of its overall slope. It's definitely quite unlike the German vehicles here. For an example, the mouse is at its best when it faces the enemy diagonally, because this means that there is even more slope towards its frontal and even side armor. But the IS-7 really shouldn't try that, because it actually loses effective armor this way. Now this means that assaulting the enemy is usually relatively easy. However, trying to peek around cover is not that much. Why so? Because when the IS-7 peeks through cover, usually the enemy can get a good shot off at its plate. There are techniques to get around this, and I hope I will be able to show you them. But they usually take some time and a lot of space around the IS-7, which can be a problem, especially if you have teammates and they want to, take a shot too. Now its turret is very well protected. The frontally, I advise even tier 10 tank destroyers from shooting it. They can technically penetrate it. It's around 280, 290, I'm not certain, but it's very thick overall. Around a little under the 300 mark it can technically be penetrated, but it's hard to do so. In fact, the only weak spot at its front is around here, but it's not that easy to shoot at it, especially if the IS-7 is good and wiggles his turret just a bit, and it's a weak spot, a small weak spot by default. The side of the turret, badly armored. Well, not badly armored, I'm sorry, just nothing great. It may bounce a shot, especially if the enemy can get a clean look at it. It may bounce a shot or two, but it's nothing that great. The back of the turret, however, is pretty much reinforced tissue paper. Now there are some good things to be said about its side armor and some very bad things. Let's get the bad things out first. From here you can hit the ammo rack. Technically you can hit it from the front too, but it's a lot easier to do it from here, and this can cause major problems to the IS-7. It doesn't seem to have ammo rack problems such as the IS-3, which can be one-shotted with some certainty, mainly because of its better ammo rack health. But it can get damaged, and very powerful guns such as, let's say, the Object 268's gun, which is a monster, they may be able to one-shot the IS-7 unless he has either the cruise kill safe stowage or a WoT ammo rack. Even though it's better to just have the stowage because it is usually just enough to help make the IS-7 immune to one-shotting. And the other bad is that this upper plate, despite being 150 millimeters thick, won't really protect you all that much. It's not pathetically weak, but it's nothing all that great at tier 10. And neither is this part here. The only way you may bounce on this lower part here is if the enemy shoots diagonally, goes through the tracks which count as spaced armor, and then bounces off. Speaking of spaced armor though, this middle plate here is a very good thing for the IS-7. There are actually two plates here. The first one is not that thick. I don't know how thick it was. Maybe it was 20, 30 or 50 millimeters, but it's not that important. The important part is its spaced armor, and when the enemy shoots, and they will usually penetrate this first plate, they have lost some penetration and their normalization bonus for their armor piercing shells. And after that there is a 100 millimeter plate that is diamond shaped like this, even a little bit more. And considering the angle and the fact that they've lost the normalization of the shell, the enemy will very likely bounce. In other words, this side plate here is very tough. The back of the tank might protect from tier 4 and 5 scouts, but really not more. When it comes down to artillery protection, the IS-7 is mid of the line, nothing more can be said. It's better at times than the T110E5, which is a little bit weaker against artillery than the IS-7, but it's nothing really special. Not that there is a vehicle in the game which can actually take damage from artillery and live, but yeah, it should be noted. Its gun is different than the IS-8's gun, and this may throw off some people. The 130mm S70 is a different gun than the 122 M62 T2, which is used on the IS-4, ST1 or STI, I'm not sure, and the IS-8. First off, it is a little bit less accurate, even though the difference is not that great. I mean, it's still livable accuracy, it's not technically pathetic. But look at the aim time. 3.4 seconds aim time, that's very bad. And it's one of the IS-7's biggest cons. The 122mm gun has only 2.9 seconds aim time, which is not really great aim time, but it is a lot better. Definitely a lot better. In fact, yeah, the IS-7 is very bad when it comes down to its aim time. When it comes down to damage, however, it is a step up, a noticeable step up. That's not to say that the 122mm gun was bad at dealing damage, oh no sir, but the 130mm gun just deals a lot of damage, almost 500 average damage. This is something that will ruin pretty much everyone's day. However, it also balances out on a little bit less penetration, though even though it's 8mm difference in penetration for armor piercing shells, it is not all that big of a difference overall. 260 is still pretty good, and what 268 can penetrate and can't penetrate, the same goes for the 130mm S70. Its rate of fire is obviously lower due to the higher damage per shot, but it is still decent. The IS-7 deals a good amount of damage per minute. However, here's something that is not all that good. It's premium ammo. At 303 penetration, considering its armor piercing composite rigid ammo, the IS-7 is not that bad, actually. Of course, armor piercing composite rigid also comes with even more normalization bonuses, but loses penetration with distance. Still, with 303 penetration, it will be able to go through pretty much the vast majority of the vehicles in the game easily, including other IS-7s. However, the 122mm gun has 400mm of penetration. True, it is heat, which doesn't get normalization, even though on the flip side it also doesn't lose penetration on distance, which is always a plus. But at 400mm of penetration, it is simply better than the APCR on the IS-7. So firepower, well, it's good. I mean especially at closer ranges where the aim time doesn't matter as much. But it's still bad aim time, even though the accuracy is at least workable. It's basically a very big BL9. It's a good gun overall. Now, when it comes down to mobility, this is where the IS-7 doesn't really do all that well, surprisingly, not that it does bad. It is not as fast as the AMX-50B, and all in all, I'd say it's very comparable to the T-57 and the T-110E5, with 50, I'm sorry, in the next patch 59.6 kilometers, let's round it up to 60 kilometers of top speed. The IS-7 can theoretically achieve a very high amount of speed. However, due to its relatively, actually it's not the engine's fault, I'm sorry, due to its relatively bad ground passability values, which unfortunately we can't see in the game but they're in the game files, the IS-7 simply doesn't get the most out of its engine, which kind of means that in a straight line on good terrain the IS-7 can achieve a very good amount of speed given some space, but on bad, hell, even mediocre ground the IS-7 will simply not accelerate or maneuver all that well. Still, when it comes, still if you're talking about good terrain and or going downwards, like from a hill or something, the IS-7 can be a very fast vehicle. In fact, considering its amount of frontal armor, its speed, its engine power, and its mass, it can ram even the vast majority of the light, medium, and even some high tier heavy tanks such as the 113 Chinese vehicle. It can definitely ram them, even though seriously never try to ram an E100 or a mouse. That usually ends very badly for the IS-7. So mobility, a mixed bag. At times very good, at others not technically incredibly bad, but just not good, especially on swampy terrain. When it comes down to some of its other soft stats, signal range is obviously good. I mean, it's a tier 10 radio. What more can we expect from a tier 10 radio? Its view range 400 mm, nothing bad, nothing good. Its turret traverse speed better than the 100 and the mouse, but nothing great. And same for its normal traverse speed, the whole traverse speed, even though I have to say that it also doesn't have pivot turn, which, you know, it's a small bonus. It's nice to have it. It's not a very big con, but it just doesn't have it, which, yeah, it's a small con. And its engine is technically the IS-7 may not be able to get the most out of it. However, it's a tough engine, which does allow it to use its removed speed governor during the entire battle. Gun elevation and gun depression are decent. -6 gun depression, it's workable. +18, I believe, gun elevation. Again, nothing incredible, but nothing all that bad either. It's better than the 113, and it's also not as bad as some other tier 10 vehicles such as the T62A, which only has -5 degrees gun depression, but it is not just it's not very good. Just average. Yeah, average is a good word for it. Average to slightly below average. And yeah, that's a relatively good guide to the IS-7. Now it's time to showcase its capabilities in a battle. This is a battle on fjords. I usually don't really enjoy fjords all that much, and there are many artillery units. We will be facing the British FV215B, a couple of IS-7s, a Batchat and an E100 as their top enemy vehicles. This won't be easy. Now, when it comes down to modules, I recommend Rammer. A good alternative to vertical stabilizer is gun laying drive, even though the vertical stabilizer is better for an IS-7. Still, both of them may really help the IS-7's poor aim time, so yeah, rammer, vertical stabilizer, advanced gun lane drive, and ventilation. Something else which you can also use is binocular telescope and the optics. Oh, looks like I am famous. Oh, so awesome. So yeah, this is what I'd recommend for an IS-7. Something, when it comes down to crew skills, I mean, what I'd recommend for the commander is a... let me just get this little guy. What I'd recommend for the commander is Sixth Sense. By the time you buy an IS-7, you probably have a crew on the second, maybe even third skill. So the first skill should really be Sixth Sense. Really, everything else kind of depends on your own play style to a certain extent. But Sixth Sense is a very good skill. I really recommend it. As for the gunner, well, wow, they obliterated our T-125. Oh, that was an ammo rack explosion. Man, that must suck. So anyways, for the gunner, the not the smooth right, the other one, which gives a bonus to accuracy when the vehicle is moving its turret. That crew skill is a very good choice, and in my opinion something which really helps the IS-7 because of its bad aim time. For the driver, smooth ride. Smooth ride should definitely come first, at least in my opinion. Another good alternative somewhat is definitely Off-Road King, because the IS-7's poor cross-country performance, it may help the IS-7. As for the loaders, the first loader should definitely have safe stowage. But the rest is pretty much however you'd like it. It's not that important, it's your choice. Now let's concentrate on the battle. Now I do hope I have a peekable situation which I would be able to show how to deal with such situations, or maybe demonstrate one. It's in battle, but who gives a crap, they're not here anyways. Let's say I have to shoot an enemy that is where the IS-3 is currently at. If I do something like this, it is not a very good idea. They will be able to just shoot at my by now not all that well angled frontal armor and penetrate. But if I do something like this, which is kind of a variation of the side scraper to a certain extent, I'm still keeping most of my frontal armor in a good position towards the enemy. Now it's time to counter that heavy tank. Another IS-7. How quaint. So yeah, that's one way. Ooh, looks like they're flanking. I'd rather shoot the IS-8 simply because he is weaker than the IS-7 and has a gun that is just as powerful. I mean, he is a threat I really should kill. See, that this is just a very... the gun just deals a lot of damage. I hope that IS-3 is not an idiot and knows to keep his head down. Unfortunately, I kind of underestimated his angle of attack and didn't move, but even I make mistakes. Now, how do I counter that IS-7? I hope he doesn't have friends, I really do hope. So, because if he does, my planning would be kind of flawed. I'm probably gonna get yes, I got penetrated. He shot at my weak point. But the IS-3 in return got a very good shot at him, so yeah. What am I gonna do with the 100? I have no idea. I thought that he was looking at the IS-3, which means that I would be able to afford a quick peekaboo shot. Unfortunately, it seems I was wrong. We're in a bad situation right now. Where is the other IS? Oh, there he is. I hope he can take on the 100. The IS-3 and I will be focusing on this IS-7 here. Come on, make that mistake, make that... Oh man! I didn't hit him well. That's... Oh, I hope he's still in this position. That's a good shot, IS-3, very, very good shot. This will be a hard shot to execute.
He's gone. Find
Done.
another target.
He is dead. I think our RT hit the E-100. Yes, he did. 700 damage. That's a good amount of damage. Now let's go help our IS-7 knock out their E-100. In the meantime, the T-62 and our IS-3, which by the way, he is a good shot. He knows how to use the BL-9 effectively. Or so it seems. They should be able to kill their IS-7. Oh, so E-100, you're kind of the aggressive type, eh? Another good way to assault the enemy is if there are very small obstacles which might be able to cover the IS-7's lower hull.
Enemy is hit. Gotcha.
As I said, the S-70 is usually good enough if it wasn't for its accuracy. In fact, that's one of the few things which I think the IS-7 should get buffed. I don't want to make it a fast aiming gun, but... Oh, I did good. Why do I always do that? I have no idea. But it would be good if they at least lower its aim time to, let's say, 3 seconds. It is still relatively slow, mind you, but it would be a good deal better. It won't make the IS-7 overpowered, contrary to popular belief. GW Panther, man, he kind of got grips with the situation too quickly.
They're knocked down.
There, got him. Oh, 5 kills, that's a decent battle. So I did demonstrate how to use peekaboo, even though I didn't really give a very good example of it. Make a good example of it. The battle itself was decent. Sniper 15 out of 15. Good job. Damage 5,500. That's good. That's good. Nothing incredible, but that's good. Potential damage received. Oh, it seems like I've actually bounced several of my shots, which is always nice. 1,200 to 1,025 experience without a premium account is quite good. Actually, I quite enjoyed the battle. It wasn't something mind-blowing, but it was good. So just to see. Oh yes, it was called Snapshot, the skill. For the other skills, it really depends on you. Though do remember, keep repair somewhere. You really do need repair on the IS-7. So I hope you enjoyed this review / guide of the IS-7. Thank you for your attention, guys.